The trunk snapped open with a smell like old salt and machine oil, and the attic heat pressed on my shoulders until sweat stung the cut on my knuckle. Navy canvas, brass corner plates, my father's ghost in a hinge that complained once, and then stood at attention. I pushed aside a folded flag, creases sharp as orders, and a stack of letters tied with a navy ribbon that had bled a faint line of blue into the paper. Underneath, a wallet-thin packet slid free and slapped the cedar floor. A cafe receipt, yellowed at the edges as if the sun had been interrogating it for years. On the back, in his block letters that used to correct my homework, "Come back when you're ready to start over." I didn't breathe for a count of 4, then let air out slow, the way the Corps taught me. My name was there, plain as a rank, Madeline, written in the corner like a whisper that refused to fade. I held the slip by the edges, as if truth had skin, and heat from the attic lamp warmed the ink until it felt new. The cafe line read, "The Second Cup, King and Doty, 2:17 p.m., no year, no mercy." "Mom!" I called down the ladder. The house smelled like dryer sheets and the pot roast she made when the weather couldn't decide. "Did Dad ever—" "Lunch there after church sometimes," she said, voice already softening the edges. "He liked their coffee. Too strong for me." Commander Gregory Clark did everything strong. Coffee, posture, silence. MIA for the final chapter. Missing in action in another way long before. Home, but half buried under duty in the sort of honesty that pretends it has no story left to tell. I had worn my own wars smoother with time and paperwork, then drifted after the discharge like a boat with a good hull and no chart, Marine Major to outreach desk clerk in a strip mall where the Keurig hissed like a tired snake. I helped other veterans read their letters. I didn't read my own. The Zippo lay under the receipt, the chrome dulled. One nick on the lid I could place with a memory. Dad flipping it shut on the porch after a storm. Flames snuffed in a single practiced bite. I thumbed the lid open. The hinge sang a thin metal note. The cotton inside still held the ghost of lighter fluid, clean and medicinal. Along the side, an engraving I'd never seen. Fulton. My father's ship when I was 10, the one the grown-ups spoke about in nouns they didn't explain. Incident, review, oversight, and then in verbs that meant stop. Don't ask. I slid the receipt into my back pocket and the lighter into the other. Weight evened like I was redistributing gear before a patrol. The flag flattened itself in the trunk as if it had been waiting for this sequence. Above me, the attic bulb hummed until it popped. The smell of warm dust lifted, and for a second, I tasted JP5 on a flight deck in August. I stepped down the ladder into the cooler air of the hallway and felt the floorboards answer my boots. Civilian house, military feet. Mom stood at the bottom, hands on a dish towel, a reflex older than my questions. "Find anything?" she asked. "A receipt," I said, "and a message." Her eyes went to the ribboned letters like a compass that wanted to behave. "Greg had his secrets," she said, not looking at me. "Mostly to protect us." "From what?" I asked. She gave the face people make when the past walks in with muddy shoes. "From truth that didn't fit in a kitchen," she said. I drove downtown with the window cracked and the note's words burning hot through denim. The city smelled like rain on brick and old magnolia. A bus sighed past with an advertisement for a bank that promised forgiveness at 18% APR. The Second Cup sign leaned into the corner like a saluting shoulder. Painted letters, a small chipped mug swinging from a chain. Inside, the bell on the door rang a clean, thin note. The air smelled like espresso and citrus peel, the kind of place where somebody wipes the cups dry by hand. A woman at the counter looked up. 60s, silver hair braided into a simple rope, eyes that had seen war without a uniform. "You're late," she said, and smiled like she knew the joke and the sting. "I didn't get the message until today," I said, setting the receipt on the counter between us. She flipped it with her thumb as if she'd practiced this movement. "June Parker," she said. "He asked me to hold something." She looked at the Zippo peeking from my pocket and nodded to herself, like a checklist item confirmed. "You look like him when you decide." "I look like myself," I said on reflex, then softened. "But I hear him." She slid a small wooden box across the counter. It fit my palm like an ordinance I could choose not to throw. Inside, velvet worn thin by waiting, lay a second Zippo felt sleeve, a folded sheet of navy letterhead, and a note in his hand. Start over means tell the truth. The lighter's felt smelled like camphor and thyme. The letterhead creaked when I opened it. A ship's name ghosted in watermark, USS Fulton. 3 lines, not bureaucratic, human. If you're reading this, I ran out of time to fix what I broke by letting silence talk. Start here. Don't let rank keep you from the right words. Dad, June poured coffee into a chipped mug and slid it over. On the house, she said. Paid in advance by a man who couldn't sit still but wanted someone to. Steam rose. Citrus curled at the rim. I swallowed. The bitterness was clean. Start where? June nodded to the letterhead. He left breadcrumbs. You've been a Marine long enough to follow terrain. She glanced at the door, then at me. When you're ready to start over. I folded the note, slid it next to the receipt in my pocket, and felt both edges cut a neat, reassuring line against my thigh. The Zippo clicked shut. The sound of something decided. Outside, a flag on the courthouse lawn snagged wind and then found it, snapping twice like a signal I'd heard my whole life without naming. Okay, I said. Let's start. June's smile didn't widen. It steadied. Good, she said. He wanted you to be the one to carry it. I lifted the mug, read the grain of the woodbox like a map, and understood the message on the receipt wasn't a riddle. It was an order of march I had been avoiding until the boots fit again. My father kept order like other men kept pets. Shoes aligned heel to heel by the door, brass polished on Sundays, flag folded to geometry. He wasn't cruel. He was exact. Breakfast smelled like black coffee and burnt toast because he liked it that way. Edges crisp, center honest. He taught me to read a decalogue before most kids learned cursive. Write the truth you'd sign, he'd say, pen tapping the margin. He never tapped twice. When the Navy labeled him MIA, our house didn't explode. It depressurized. The flag came in a triangle, creases sharp enough to cut, and silence took the wide chair by the window. Mom learned to speak in conditionals. He would have loved this, she'd say, at graduations and broken toasters. She kept letters in a shoebox under the bed, blue ink thinned by time, the paper smelling faintly of the cedar chest she pretended was a vault. I shipped to Paris Island because sand fleas don't confuse intent. The Corps shaved my edges down to function. Sweat tasted like salt and metal. Drill instructors sounded like engines that never stalled. I learned the clean mercy of checklists and the dirt under nail reality of leadership. You carry what you ask others to lift. Deployments taught me that midnight has different temperatures depending on which desert you're in. Coming home taught me that grocery store fluorescent lights can be louder than mortars. Discharge landed soft. DD Teku 14 on a desk that smelled like dry marker and old coffee. And then nothing landed at all. I drifted like a strong swimmer in a pool with no lanes. The Veteran Outreach Office hired me because I could explain forms without shaming people. And the Keurig made a sound like a small jet spooling up. We kept a donation jar on the counter, coffee for the next one, and the regulars nodded at it like a flag. Men sat across from me, smelling like laundry soap and diesel, women with baby powder on their sleeves and medals in purses that also held grocery lists. I filed claims no one had time to read and wrote appeal letters like prayers shaped for bureaucrats. Some afternoons, I took my own lunch at the Vietnamese place next door just to talk to a person who didn't ask me for proof of pain. I kept my father's old Zippo in my desk drawer. Lid scar nicked, chrome dulled. I never lit it, but sometimes I'd thumb it open and let the hinge sing that brief metal note. It smelled like camphor and old ships, like a deck at dawn. Mom visited on Wednesdays with grocery coupons and updates that never trespassed on grief. She'd slide me a sandwich wrapped in wax paper and smooth the napkin as if tidy corners could pin down time. Your father was always honest, she'd say, and then correct herself, staring at the sandwich. Honest about duty. Honest about duty, yes. Honest about everything, no. There were the words he didn't sign. USS Fulton spoken like a door you only open if the weather demands it. There were the years when, after the incident, was how adults ended sentences, as if a noun could tow the weight of a life. We never said what the incident was. We kept living around its outline. I tried civilian hobbies the way you try on jackets you don't intend to buy. Rock climbing felt like repeating a mistake slowly. Book clubs felt like stretching words until they tore. I drove to base gates sometimes for no reason, but to watch the flag snap into its own certainty above the guard shack. When the wind died, it hung perfectly still, and that too looked like strength. The trunk stayed shut because I told myself I respected boundaries. Really, I was afraid the story in there would be smaller than the ache around it. On the morning I opened it, the attic air held that humid attic smell, warm dust and old cardboard, and I felt the old Marine in me inventory the scene. Flag, ribboned letters, lighter, trunk corners gone green at the brass. My hands didn't shake, my questions did. I remember Dad once bringing me to a pier where the USS Fulton's shadow ate the water near the pilings. "She's a tender," he said. "Fixer of others." His hand stayed on my shoulder too long for casual, heavy as a sentence he hadn't finished. Later at dinner, he read the paper and didn't laugh at the comics. Mom stirred chili like it would make a different sound if stirred correctly. After he went missing, the Navy sent forms that smelled like copier heat and turned grief into checkboxes. Next of kin. Personal effects. Pending review. I learned to file grief in triplicate. I learned that truth doesn't always travel through channels. Sometimes it stands at a counter and orders coffee, cash only. I held that receipt in the attic, paper thin as onion skin, ink stubborn, and realized my father had left me a mission, brief disguised as an errand. Come back when you're ready to start over. Start over didn't feel like erasing. It felt like sharpening. The instruction hit the part of me that had slept in desert air and woken to sand on teeth. My life had been a patrol around a hole. The receipt drew a line straight through. On the drive to the second cup, I thought about the last call we never had. The way he signed his letters, G. Clark, like a rank, not a man. The way when I was 9, he taught me to flick a Zippo shut, one clean bite, and said, "Finish the motion even if you don't like the sound." I liked the sound. I didn't like that he'd prepared me for a silence he couldn't break. June's cafe smelled like citrus peel and beans ground fresh. The bell on the door chimed a note that could have been a call to attention if you were listening for it. Vets hunched over mugs with both hands like heat could solder cracks. A framed maintenance log page hung behind the counter, smudged carbon copy under glass. USS Fulton, drill canceled. XO initial, illegible. Someone had tucked a tiny flag in the frame's corner, tilted like it was still finding wind. I'd worn my outreach badge out of habit. June glanced at it, then at me, and poured without asking. Veterans' coffee tastes different when someone pays ahead. It lands warmer, less alone. When she slid me the box with the second note, start over means tell the truth, something in my spine stood up. I realized I'd been waiting for permission to do what I already knew how to do. At home that night, the receipt sat on my kitchen counter under the Zippo, both edges aligned like a field expedient memorial. The house sounded like the houses of people who live alone. Refrigerator hum, occasional pipe knock, my own breath echoing if I laughed. I turned off the light, and the lighter's chrome caught one last street lamp blade before going dark. In the quiet, a plan unspooled. Old ship, old incident, current men who profited from ending conversations early. I texted Mom a photo of the receipt and the cafe sign. "Did you know June Parker?" She replied fast, "Yes. She sent your father back to us after deployments with cinnamon scones and too much advice. Good woman. Careful heart." Then, "Be careful, Mads." She only called me Mads when she wanted me to feel 9. "I will," I said to the empty room and to the part of myself that had been drifting since the discharge. I slid the receipt into my wallet where my license should have been, closed the Zippo with the clean bite he taught me, and watched the flame I didn't light die without protest. My father had taken his truth to sea and never brought it back. The receipt said he'd left a line tied to shore anyway. All I had to do was pull. The bell over the second cup's door rang a clear, thin note that felt like a tuning fork in my ribs. Espresso and orange peel cut the air. The grinder's burr sang for 3 seconds, then released the room back to conversation. A ceiling fan ticked. A quiet metronome. A flag the size of a dish towel sat in a frame near the register, tilted like it was still learning the wind. June Parker lifted her eyes before I spoke. The kind of recognition that has nothing to do with faces and everything to do with posture. Madeline Clark, she said. Not a question. Her voice carried the warmth of someone who remembers names even when they hurt. I set the yellowed receipt on the counter. The paper was soft at the corners, ink stubborn. He said to come back when I was ready. June flipped it with her thumb, the way you check a bill, and smiled like a verdict had matched the ledger. Greg knew you'd find it when the boots fit again. She reached beneath the counter and set a small wooden box between us, the grain worn shiny by waiting. He left this for you, wouldn't let me mail it. You'll know when, he said. The lid creaked with a dry, restrained note. Inside lay a felt Zippo sleeve that smelled faintly of camphor and old pockets, and a single sheet of navy letterhead folded twice with ship-shaped corners. On top, his block letters, "Start over," means tell the truth. I slid the note free. The watermark, USS Fulton, ghosted through like a ship seen under fog. The words were short, no rank, no flourish. If you're reading this, I ran out of time to fix what silence broke. Start here. Don't let titles talk you out of facts. Dad. The Zippo fit my palm like a tool that remembers your hand. I thumbed the lid. The hinge sang its thin metal note. The cotton inside held the clean medicine smell of lighter fluid. Long evaporated, still present. Along the side, an engraving I hadn't seen on the one in the trunk. Fulton, Drill 0217. The same minute printed on the receipt. A rendezvous between objects. June poured coffee into a chipped mug. Navy ring around the rim, deliberate, and slid it across. Paid for, she said. He ran a tab against a day like this. The first sip was bitter and clean, citrus in the steam. How much did he tell you? I asked. Enough to keep me honest, she said. Not enough to make me useful without you. She tipped her chin at the letterhead. He said you'd know what a start line looks like. My mother always said my father was honest. She never said with whom. I unfolded the note again, let the paper rasp my thumb. A grease smudge stamp near the bottom margin caught light. Safety drill? Canceled. A line in pencil, different hand, had circled it and written XO beside an illegible initial. June watched my eyes land. Greg agonized over that word, she said. Canceled. He said the day it disappeared from the log, something else did too. What? Room, she said. For truth. The cafe door opened and closed. The bell chimed. A veteran in a ball cap drifted to a corner table and wrapped both hands around a mug like heat could solder cracks. The fan clicked once, corrected itself. My lighter sat heavy and right in my palm. The receipt in my pocket cut a neat line against my thigh. June slid a napkin over and wrote a name with a pen that scratched like a small animal. Harold Miller, Chief, retired, VA on Bay Street. Under it, another, Ethan Cole, XO then, consultant now. She underlined the second name twice, not theatrical. Greg said those two were the bookends. One told him drills save lives. The other told him drills waste time. Which one is which? I asked, though I already knew from the underline. She lifted a shoulder. You'll read it in their faces. Start with the chief. He still signs his emails with Stay Loud. I slipped the napkin under the Zippo sleeve, then nested the note on top like a field expedient file. June's hand hovered, then landed on the box lid. He left one more thing, she said, softer. She reached beneath the velvet and pulled up a small Polaroid. Colors faded to the warm end of memory. My father in coveralls, one hand on a bulkhead, laughter caught midline. Beside him, a younger officer with a neat jaw and a pen clipped to his collar. Ethan Cole, without the decades. On the back, in my father's handwriting, tell her I didn't stop being brave. Just didn't know how to be loud. Orange peel in the steam. Fan ticking. The flag in the frame leaned an impatient degree to the right. I felt the old muscle memory twitch, the one that makes you reach for a map, a radio, a roster. Discharge had made me smaller to fit rooms that didn't need watchstanders. This box made me my size again. June refilled my mug without asking. There's a Freedom of Information form in the city clerk's office, she said. Looks like busy work. Isn't. If you want help, I know which window to knock. You always this prepared? I asked. Only when a Clark walks in with that stare, she said. Your dad wore it like a rank. You wear it like a promise. I closed the box. The wood clicked. Quiet, final, not the end. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Veteran outreach calendar reminder for a claims workshop that suddenly felt like the training it had always been for this moment. I texted Mom a photo of the Zippo and the note. He left a path. 3 dots flashed, then, follow it. I'll make pot roast. Bring whoever you need. The kind of love that smells like onions and a second chance. I tucked the receipt into my wallet, behind my ID, in front of everything else. Let the Zippo drop into my pocket and felt the weight even me out. Oh, June slid a business card across, white simple, the second cup, for when you're ready. On the back, she'd signed June and drawn a tiny square, like a starting block. I stood. The bell chimed again, clean, objective. He told you to wait for me? I asked. June nodded. He said you'd come when you were done drifting. He said to say this exactly. Start over means tell the truth. Out on the sidewalk, the city smelled like wet brick and magnolia. A bus brake sighed like a man deciding to be decent. I flipped the Zippo open, let the hinge sing, then shut it clean without a flame. Finish the motion even if you don't like the sound. The receipt edge pressed a reminder into my hip. The name, Ethan Cole, glowed on the napkin through the box lid like a caption waiting for a photo. I turned toward Bay Street in the VA, the lighter a small weight against my thigh, and felt the day shift from coffee to orders. The kind you give yourself when the only rank that matters is the truth you're willing to carry into a room. The VA on Bay Street smelled like floor cleaner and burnt coffee. Thursday's blend, thin and loyal. Fluorescents hummed. A TV in the corner tried to sell wheelchairs to people who already owned pride. I signed in with a pen that left a faint groove in my thumb and asked for Chief Harold Miller. The volunteer at the desk, hair netted, eyes kind, pointed with her chin. Canteen. He audits the donuts. Harold wore years like a well-fitted jacket. Retired chief, name tape faded on a ball cap, forearms roped, newspaper folded into a compass on the table. He held a styrofoam cup with both hands, the way vets do when heat helps. I set my wooden box and the second cup napkin down between us. The receipt in my wallet pressed a steady rectangle against my hip. The Zippo knocked my thigh once like a cue. Chief Miller, I said. Depends who's asking, he said, not looking up. His voice could sand a plank without touching it. Madeline Clark, I said. Gregory's daughter. He met my eyes, then stood a half-inch straighter. Respect, not performance. He said you had his stare, Harold murmured. He didn't say it would make me 30 again. I slid the Zippo sleeve out and the letterhead folded on navy corners. He left me crumbs, I said. I'm hungry. Harold tapped the paper with one finger, greased scar across the knuckle. Fulton, he said. The ship's name came out like a prayer swallowed halfway. He took a breath that tasted like old smoke. Drills got canceled the month before everything. XO called them theatrics. We called them practice for not dying. Ethan Cole, I said. The napkin's ink looked darker in this light. Harold's mouth went thin. Cole liked a clean log and a quiet deck, he said. Your old man liked truth with edges. They didn't sing harmony. He dragged his paper across the table and drew a rough calendar. Boxes squared, a chief's geometry. He penciled drill through 3 Tuesdays, then struck the 4th with a hard line. We logged the cancellation, he said. Next day, the carbon copy was gone. Maintenance log started sprouting omissions. Doors marked secured were stuck painted shut. He sipped coffee, grimaced. Safety is a muscle. Cole told us we were getting flabby from flexing optics. Your father wrote him a memo that could have sharpened a dull blade. Do you have it? I asked. Did, he said. It walked. I flipped the Zippo open and shut, hinge singing a thin truth. Foyer, I said. Foyer, he nodded. Start with maintenance and training. Ask for all versions of the 217 drill logs. He pointed at the engraving on my lighter with his chin. That timestamp meant something to your dad. He was a metronome. I left the VA with a copy of Harold's hand-drawn calendar and the smell of veteran coffee woven into my jacket. Outside, the flag above the entrance caught wind and snapped twice, then settled into patience. I dialed the city clerk from the sidewalk, the phone pressed hot against my ear. The clerk's office smelled like toner and lemon spray, the kind of room where truth gets asked to wear a tie. Freedom of information request, and I said, maintenance logs and drill records for USS Fulton, month prior to Commander Gregory Clark's MIA designation. Multiple versions if they exist. The clerk's eyebrows rose like window blinds. That ship's old, she said. So's the filing cabinet. I'm persistent, I said. So is paper. She slid me a form that made a complaint by its existence. I filled it clean, block letters like his, and handed it back with the receipt number for the filing fee paid in cash. The receipt's crisp paper echoed the cafes. 2 rectangles in concert. 2 weeks, she said. Maybe. I took a veteran's coffee from the lobby urn, burnt and perfect, and sat in my car with the engine off to feel the day shift from request to promise. The Zippo was a small weight where I needed it. The napkin with Cole's name bled ink onto the box lid like a headline learning to be a story. Mini turn. The email from the Navy FOIA portal landed that night. Subject line all caps, partial response, redactions apply. Attached, PDFs that smelled like cold laser toner even through the screen. Maintenance log, Rev A, clean, careful, drills listed. Rev B, same dates, 1 drill stamped. Canceled and initialed EC. Rev C, that line missing, spacing suspiciously perfect. A second attachment, safety memo, Commander G. Clark to XO Ethan Cole. Half black bars, the remaining words angrier for their survival, canceling drills, repeated warnings, crew readiness, SNI liability. I printed them on my cheap home printer and the paper came out warm, edges curling like sails in no wind. I laid Rev A, B, C side by side on my kitchen table under the Zippo's shadow. You buried the truth, I said to the empty room. The truth kept receipts. June's text arrived with a photo of a 4th of July clipping from years back. Cole smiling under bunting at a Rotary Hall, hand on a boy's shoulder, caption crowing about safety awards. Karma's punctual if you set your watch right, she wrote. Set it to 2:17, I typed back. I asked the clerk for unredacted copies under appeal and filed a second request for work orders, watertight doors, port side, month 1. The appeal smelled like stubbornness and ink. Meanwhile, I went back to the VA with the printouts. Harold held them up to the light like he could interrogate Toner. Rev B is real, he said. Rev C is what Cole handed inspectors. Who else saw Rev B? People who got told to forget, he said. People who didn't. Names? He rubbed his jaw, sandpaper on oak. Machinist Mate Rivera. Damage controlman Lang. The chaplain's clerk. Oddly, his job was to know who was lying to themselves. We found Rivera through a Facebook group for sailors who missed ship steel on rainy days. His garage smelled like axle grease and old fish. He put 2 beers on the workbench and tapped the maintenance log with a fingernail that had seen machine shop accidents. Cole called drills pretend fires kunons. He said, your old man called them practice funerals. We liked your old man's math. Lang sent a scanned photo of the door tag, WT12 port stuck, dated 2 weeks before the incident. Work order got resolved without being touched. He wrote in the email. The photo's edges had the digital fuzz of a life saved once from a box fan and taped back together. Paper remembers even if you try to sand it smooth. I brought everything to June's back table, the cafe after hours at church, espresso scent like incense. She laid out a corkboard and stuck the maintenance log copies in rows with brass thumbtacks that clicked like small medals. We added Harold's calendar, Rivera's statements, Lang's photo, and the Polaroid of Dad with Cole, both men smiling at nothing anyone should have been smiling at. The Zippo sat in the corner like a compass. The receipt rode the bottom edge, a keel. Next, June asked, a bartender's question in a town that served truth by the glass when it could. Find Cole, I said. Public enough to pin him, she said. She slid a flyer across. Rotary Hall, Veterans Night. Keynote. Ethan Cole, Defense Consultant. The date glowed like a countdown. They love microphones, when she said. Let him pick one up. Mini turn. My appeal pinged as accepted. Additional pages forthcoming. The unredacted safety memo arrived 2 days later. No black bars, just words that bit on purpose. To XO Ethan Cole. From CDR Gregory Clark. Canceled drills and watertight integrity. Sir, your cancellation of 217 drills, 3 consecutive weeks, has degraded crew readiness. Watertight door, WT 12 port, remains unserviced despite repeated 4790 entries. Your directive to prioritize optics over theatrics is noted and rejected. Recommend immediate reinstitution of drills and work order confirmation. Sasiche, Safety Officer. Chaplain, Crew Morale. Fleet Inspector, on next call. At the bottom, a signature block with my father's name, pen pressure visible in the scan. Below it, in a different ink, returned, handle in-house. EC. June whistled low. There's your spine, she said. There's his shrug. I took the packet to Mom. The house smelled like pot roast and rain in the window screen. She sat at the table where we'd signed permission slips and cooked late-night pasta when he was underway. Her fingers smoothed the memo as if ironing Iron's words. I told myself he died clean, she said. I told myself truth was sterile. It wasn't. It was this: grease and paper and a pen pressing too hard. He told you to wait for me, I said, and she smiled like a woman recognizing a street at dawn. We packed a folder, maintenance logs, the memo, names, dates, and I slid the receipt on top because that's how the story started. I slipped the Zippo into my pocket until it sat right where a weapon might go, but wasn't. On the day of the Rotary event, I wore a plain suit that fit like a uniform and felt my stripes anyway. The hall smelled like coffee and big urns and old carpet shampoo. Flags lined the stage. A banner declared Service, Community, Honor in font that tried too hard. Veterans gathered in clusters, palms cradling paper cups. The podium mic leaned forward like it knew it was about to be used wrong. Ethan Cole arrived with a consultant's tie and the easy smile of a man who had learned to charm auditoriums. He gripped shoulders, spoke in volumes, and let the rotary pin catch light like a junior medal. June stood near the back with Harold, both of them the kind of quiet that makes space. Mom slid into a seat by the aisle, hands around a coffee she didn't sip. I touched the Zippo in my pocket and felt the engraving under my thumb. Fulton Drill, 0217. I set the folder on my lap, the receipt riding the top like a rank tab. The flag at stage left found air and snapped once. The room settled to the hush that comes right before a reveal. Cole cleared his throat, leaned toward the mic, and began to talk about safety. I stood when he lied the third time. The coffee smell suddenly too sweet. The maintenance logs a heat on my knees, and understood that the line on Dad's receipt, "Come back when you're ready to start over," had led exactly here. A public room, a microphone, and a truth with hands big enough to carry a family out of water. The Rotary Hall smelled like earned coffee and old carpet, the kind that keeps yesterday's speeches. Flags stood in a row still as judges. Still, as his Ethan Cole's voice ran easy through the mic. Warm, professional. "Safety is culture," he said, hands light on the podium. The consultant's smile didn't reach his eyes. I stood on his third smooth sentence. The chair legs scraped the floor with a small, decisive bark. The folder in my hands felt hot. The Zippo pressed its engraving into my palm. Fulton Drill, 0217. The receipt rode the top like a rank tab. My mother's coffee steamed at my elbow. June and Harold squared themselves in the back. The room shifted toward me, murmurs tugging at the edges. "Major Madeline Clark, USMC," I said, voice clean. "Daughter of Commander Gregory Clark." The microphone smelled faintly of dust. The sound tech flinched, then let me have it. Cole blinked. Then the consultant's smile returned. "We can discuss later." "We'll discuss now," I said. "At 217. He glanced at the banner, Service, Community, Honor, and tried to borrow it. "Ma'am, this isn't the place." "It's exactly the place." I laid the first document on the lectern and slid it to the camera the club used for live streams. "Maintenance log, Rev A," I said. "Drills listed." Next page. Rev B, same month. 217 drill stamped canceled. Initialed EC. I let the initials ring. Rev C, line gone. The rows of veterans leaned forward. Chairs creaked like ship bulkheads in weather. Cole's jaw ticked. You misunderstand procedures. Harold stepped into the aisle, forearms roped. We lived procedures, he said. We bled when you canceled them. Mini turn. June lifted a portable projector from a tote, second cup, second use, and the wall bloomed into white. I tapped the Zippo open once, hinge singing. A cue. She threw the memo onto the screen. The unredacted page glowed. My father's signature pressed hard into pixels. To XO Ethan Cole. Canceled drills and watertight integrity. The words bit. Your directive to prioritize optics over theatrics is noted and rejected. Recommend reinstitution of drills. Confirm work order WT-12 port. A veteran in a flight jacket whistled under his breath. The Rotary president sat back slowly, paper cup forgotten in his hand. Cole's voice sharpened. Out of context. I set the Lang photo under the doc cam. WT-12 port stuck. Date stamp 2 weeks pre-incident. Then Rivera's scanned note. Then Harold's calendar with the slashed 4th Tuesday. Each page made its own sound. Paper on wood, proof finding air. Don't do this, Cole said low. You'll hurt good people. You did, I said, when you canceled the door to their lungs. He tried one more runway. Your father was unstable. My mother stood, the room quieted by instinct. He was precise, she said, voice steady. You were loud. The projector washed Cole's face pale. He looked smaller without the mic's comfort. You can't know what happened. I do, I said, and lifted the receipt, yellowed, ink stubborn. He left this, he trusted me to be loud. I flipped the Zippo shut with the clean bite he taught me. You buried the truth. The truth dug itself out. Mini turn. The doors at the back opened. The local paper's photographer slid in on soft shoes, lens already up. The live stream chat pinged into the room from laptops at the back. Show the log! He initialed it. 217. The crowd didn't need subtitles. They had decades. Harold took one step closer to the stage, quiet as a man who'd learned to approach wreckage without setting it off. Say it, he told Cole. Say the part that lets the dead breathe. Cole's shoulders sagged the way steel does when a torch finally finds it. The consultant's smile evaporated. The man underneath showed. He swallowed, eyes flicking to the memo, then to the photo of the stuck door, then, strangely, to my father's signature block. I canceled the drills, he said, voice small. I removed the line. He sucked air like it hurt. I believed optics mattered more than practice. I was wrong. Say it again, June said, gentler than I'd expected. I was wrong, he repeated. Greg warned me. He wrote. He pressed. His throat worked. The deaths are on my decision. I will amend the record, publicly. How? I asked. Today. He looked out at the rows, veterans, spouses, kids in ROTC polos, and finally saw the bill. I'll submit a sworn statement to the Navy, he said. Request an addendum restoring Commander Gregory Clark's honor. I'll fund a scholarship in his name for shipboard safety, and I'll testify to the cancellations and the altered logs. Do it from the stage, Harold said, not from a lawyer's couch. Cole nodded once, as if turning toward a wave he couldn't dodge. He faced the camera and spoke into the rotary mic that had introduced small-town fundraisers and now held actual weight. I, Ethan Cole, take responsibility, he said. I canceled 217 drills. I altered logs. Commander Gregory Clark opposed me. He was right. His voice cracked on right. I asked the Navy to correct his record to service with honor. Silence folded around the words, then opened like a lung. The Rotary president, stiff-backed, stepped to the side and lifted a hand, not stopping applause, inviting respect. Stand began in the back, boots, orthopedic shoes, church heels, rose up the rows and held. No clapping at first. Then a measured wave of hands met hands, not celebration, alignment. I looked at my mother. She nodded once, tears quiet. June touched 2 fingers to the little flag pinned to the projector screen. Tap, tap. And Harold's jaw finally unclenched. Cole set the mic down like it weighed more than him. He turned to me. I can't undo it. No, I said, but you can write it down. I will, he said, and for once his voice didn't try to charm the room. It asked permission to be plain. I slid the maintenance logs back into the folder, receipt on top, Zippo in my pocket. The engraving pressed true against my thigh. The room smelled like burnt coffee and something cleaner. Paper warmed under lights, ink drying where it needed to. Outside the hall, the wind found the flag and made it snap twice. Permission to proceed. And I understood the start line my father drew had just become a finish line for one promise and a starting block for the next. The email from Navy Personnel Command landed at Soax Stavmarkin, the time Dad used to set our kitchen clock 5 minutes fast so we'd meet the world early. Subject line plain as a salute. Addendum approved. Service record, CDRG Clark. I opened it at the counter with veteran coffee steaming and the Zippo cool against my palm. The PDF unfurled into clean type. Finding Commander Gregory Clark acted in accordance with safety protocols and advocated for crew readiness. Prior insinuations of negligence are rescinded. Notation added, service with honor. The kettle hissed. The house went still. I pressed the receipt flat beside the laptop and watched the screen's blue light polish the ink. Truth doesn't glitter. It sits up straight. June texted a photo 2 minutes later. Rotary Hall's bulletin board with a fresh flyer thumbtacked under the bunting. The Gregory Clark Scholarship. Shipboard safety and drill readiness. Cole's statement was printed beneath in black and white, signature block heavy, pen pressure visible even through the image. I canceled drills. He opposed me. He was right. E. Cole. Under it, Harold had scribbled, "Stay loud." Mom called without hello. They corrected it, she said, half awe, half exhale. I could hear the pot roast bubbling like a memory. I took the flag out, she added. I wanted to breathe for a day. Let it, I said, picturing the creases relaxing like muscles after parade rest. At the second cup, the doorbell rang its clean note and every table had a copy of the paper folded to the Metro section. Navy rewrites, local officer's legacy. The photo of Dad wasn't a headshot. It was the Polaroid June had scanned, the one with his laugh caught mid-line. Cole beside him, history corrected in present tense. June slid me a mug. On the house, she said, paid in full. Harold walked in smelling like rain and motor oil. A cardboard box under his arm. He set it on the back table and pulled out a stack of laminated checklists. Drill, 217, door status, crew count, sign. Initial lines blank, waiting. For the scholarship kits, Guinero, he said, every classroom gets one, every ship tour, every JROTC hall. We pinned the addendum letter to the cafe's corkboard between a faded maintenance log and a flyer for a food drive. Veterans drifted by, fingers grazing the page as if text could be a relic. One woman in a Navy sweatshirt touched Dad's name and tapped the glass twice, permission to proceed, then wiped her eyes with the cuff. Mini turn. Cole came in without entourage or tie, carrying a manila envelope. He looked smaller, scruff shadowing the consultant's smile off his face. He waited at the counter like everyone else, then approached with a measured humility that didn't beg. For you, he said, placing the envelope beside my mug. Inside, notarized affidavits, his sworn statement, a check made out to the Gregory Clark Scholarship Fund. No flourish. Numbers that made sense. I'll speak at the first award, he said. After the students, not before. He glanced at the Zippo. He used to flip that shut like it decided something for him. It did, I said. Finish the motion. He nodded, eyes landing on the maintenance log pinned behind me. I'll spend a year visiting ships with safety, he added, as if confessing to a good sentence. Not as a guest, as a caution. Good, I said. Bring the logs. Outside, the flag over the courthouse caught a gust and snapped once, then settled. A high school JROTC unit marched past in khakis 2 shades off, counting soft. June stepped to the doorway and, in a tone that would make a drill sergeant proud, called, 217. The cadence leader grinned and echoed, 217. Private joke headed for policy. Mom arrived with Tupperware warm through the tote. She hugged Harold, shook Cole's hand like a person forgiving herself, then set out paper plates because grief had taught her logistics. We'll start a monthly, she said, half to June, half to me. Second chances. Bring your receipts, your bad paperwork, your missing signatures. We'll sit people down and teach them to tell the truth to forms. June pointed her chin toward the corner table. That sign's yours to make. She handed me a marker that squeaked when it met the poster board. I printed second chances. Last Thursday's. Coffee for the next one. In the same block letters Dad taught me to trust. That afternoon, we walked the folder to the VA. The canteen smelled like disinfectant and cinnamon rolls done honest. Harold taped a copy of the addendum near the bulletin board that always sagged with yard sales and flag-raising notices. A kid in a hoodie, maybe 19, maybe 60, stood reading the paragraph twice, lips moving. Heard, he said to no one, then slid a claims form across the counter. Can someone help me fix this? We can, I said, and meant now, not later. The Zippo knocked my thigh like punctuation. By evening, the Navy's social channels posted the addendum. A small thing, tucked between ship selfies and recruiting videos. It didn't trend, it anchored. The comments section, usually a fistfight, filled with old handles speaking plain. He saved my rackmate. He sent us back to drill after a long watch. We didn't die because of him. June printed them and taped the thread to the corkboard in a crooked column. A new kind of maintenance log. At home, I set the framed addendum on the mantel beside the folded flag, then unfolded the flag because Mom was right, it needed to breathe. We drank veteran coffee at the dining table, the kind that tastes better when it sits with paper. Mom slid me a shoebox from the cedar chest, letters she'd kept and never opened. We read one. The ink had drifted, but the signature, G. Clark, held firm. It smelled faintly of cedar and ship. The wind shifted. Rain pushed at the window screen, that soft tin hiss. I put the receipt in a small frame and set it next to Dad's photo. On the back, I wrote in my own block letters. Came back. Starting others over, too. Before bed, I checked the scholarship account and the inbox we'd made for Restoring Honor, the column I'd promised June I'd write. It already held 5 emails. A machinist whose eval disappeared, a widow with a medal misspelled, a Marine who'd been told his file fell behind a cabinet. I typed replies that didn't say someday. I attached a template for FOIA and a list of names on Bay Street and King and Doughty, who now answered faster. The Zippo's hinge sang once in the quiet. I shut it with the bite Dad taught me. Finish the motion, even if you don't like the sound. In the morning, I'd take the addendum to the cemetery and let it meet the flagstone. Tonight, I let the new words fill the room until the old silence ran out of places to sit. The cemetery smelled like cut grass and river wind. Morning light slid along the rows of stones until it found my father's name and stood still. I set the addendum letter on the granite so the type could warm, service with honor catching a small gleam, and placed the Zippo beside it, chrome dull, engraving cold under my thumb. The flag above the hill snapped once, then settled, a steady breath. Addendum approved, I said, voice low. Paper corrected. People, too. I pulled the cafe receipt from a small frame and ran a thumb over the stiffened edge. Coffee and attic dust had given it a faint, familiar smell, citrus and cedar. On the back, under his block letters, I wrote mine. I came back. I'm not done yet. I wedged it beneath the stone's lip so it wouldn't blow, then tapped the granite twice with 2 fingers. Permission to proceed. Down the lane, a groundskeeper's truck idled, the smell of gasoline and wet clippings, while somewhere a bell from the chapel tried the hour and decided there was time. I flipped the Zippo open for the hinge's thin note, then shut it with the bite he taught me. Finish the motion even if you don't like the sound. Today, I liked it. By noon, the second cup hummed like a good ops tent. We'd printed a banner for the back wall, second chances. Letters cut from maintenance log copies, the ghost of carbon tracing the curves. Veterans lined up with folders that smelled like basements and bureaucracy, missing awards, redacted lines, names spelled almost right. June poured coffee, dark and clean, and slid sugar down the line like ammunition. Mom sat at a side table with a legal pad and a calm I recognized. She wrote boundaries at the top of the page and started a list of what we would not promise and what we would. Harold's laminated 217 drill cards went fast. Kids in JROTC shirts took them like passports. Cole arrived late and quiet, sleeves rolled, a box of plain manila folders under his arm. He worked the copy machine until his shoulders loosened. When a machinist named Rivera's niece needed an affidavit sworn, Cole set the stamp with the gravity it deserved. "Today I'm the clerk," he said. No flourish. It fit. We built a ritual without naming it. Coffee first, names, then the paper. Proof before pride. June lined the corkboard with wins and in progress, sticky notes like medals, crooked and bright. A kid barely out of high school held his grandfather's corrected DD 214 and grinned without teeth. The room stood for him. Stand compact and warm, not performance, alignment. Then they sat and kept working. Respect is daily, not televised. I wrote the first Restoring Honor column at the corner table that smelled like lemon oil and fresh toner. The words came without drama, how to FOIA, which line to appeal, why signatures matter more than stories until they make room for stories. I told them about the receipt, and the lighter, and a ship that had begged for drills. I told them the morale I'd learned standing in rooms that preferred bunting to truth. Honor isn't the absence of mistakes. It's what you do after you discover them. Later, I drove to the VA with a thermos of veteran coffee, the lid's rubber ring giving off that faint vanilla smell. In the canteen, a woman in a navy sweatshirt touched the addendum we'd pinned up and whispered, "Heard." A kid in a hoodie asked, "How do I start?" I slid him a template and my number. "Right here," I said. "Receipt, request, reply. We'll knock on the right window." He folded the paper, careful as a flag. Evening brought the kind of gold that makes brick look like memory. I stopped by the house. Pot roast and onions had turned the kitchen into childhood. Mom set a plate in front of me and tapped the framed receipt on the buffet. "He'd be relieved," she said. "He'd be busy," I said, and we both smiled. Before dark, I walked the pier behind the church where the wind smells like salt and old varnish. I took the Zippo out, thumbed the lid, let the hinge sing, and thought of my father on a tender that was supposed to fix other ships and ended up breaking because someone preferred optics to drills. The lighter shut with a neat click. Across the water, a gull argued with the air and won. My phone buzzed. First emails for the next column. A selfie from a classroom where Harold had taped a 217 card above a whiteboard. A text from Cole with a photo of the scholarship account's first deposit notification. A note from a widow who wrote, "I didn't know how to ask." "Thank you for asking for me." I answered each with the same word June loved, copy. On Sunday, we collected in the cafe after closing. June, Harold, Mom, a few of the vets who'd become fixtures. We raised chipped mugs. Not for a toast, but as a check-in. "We keep going," June said. "Coffee for the next one." We stacked folders, refilled printers, swept the floor with slow, satisfied strokes. The banner over the corkboard lifted and settled in the air conditioner's draft. Second chances breathing. On my way out, I caught my reflection in the cafe window, the Marine who had learned to be a clerk, the daughter who had learned to be loud. The receipt's shape pressed against my wallet. The Zippo's weight evened me out. I signed a small square in the air with my finger, start line, and walked into the night that smelled like citrus and rain. Back at the cemetery the next morning, I found the receipt still wedged under the stone, edges curling, ink holding. I set a small thermos of coffee at the base, no sugar, all truth, and spoke to the granite the way you talk to radio at range. "We'll hold the line," I said. "We'll drill at 217. We'll correct what needs correcting." The flag snapped twice. Permission to proceed. I tapped the stone with 2 fingers and slid the Zippo back into my pocket where it belonged. Truth doesn't expire. It's just waiting for us to be brave enough to find it. Truth never dies. It waits for courage. If you believe courage means exposing buried truths for those who cannot, subscribe for stories about redemption, justice, and the long road from silence to honor.